Tonight we got a special treat. Brother Jerry Bates is here with us, and you remember Brother Jerry was here. I don't know if you were here last year. Were you, Brother Jerry? Or was it the year? Okay, I couldn't remember when you were here, but Brother Jerry Bates is here, and he wants to talk to us about his work that he's involved in and that we support here at KW. So, Brother Jerry, we'll turn it over to you and let you have the floor.
It's very good to be able to be here with you tonight, and certainly we do appreciate your help and support for our mission work for several years now. You know, obviously, let's see if we can get this. No. Obviously, the last couple of years have been much different than what anybody ever expected. We have not been able to travel nearly as much as we normally would, and still not for that matter. We're beginning to go make some trips, but you're very limited as to where you can go. Pretty much the African countries are open. Other than that, most countries in the world are still closed. And so that's kind of the situation. But in spite of the fact that, you know, we're very limited to where we can go, really the last year had been very good for our work. It's much bigger now than it was last year. And I'm sure for many people, when they hear the work was expanded in the time of the pandemic, they'd probably think, well, how in the world can you do that? Well, it wasn't anything we planned, really. It just happened to work out that way. But we're so grateful for that opportunities opened up and we had the funds available that we could use those opportunities. And so things are much bigger now, and things are still growing for that matter. And so that's the good part about it. As I said, we have beginning to open up some. I made one trip last year. I've already made 2 trips. And I booked my tickets today, for a matter of fact, for another trip to Tanzania in September. So that'll be 3 this year, and that'll probably wind us up for this year anyway. And hopefully next year will be a little bit more than normal, but who knows? We thought this year would be more back to normal too, but so don't look like there's any signs of going down really. But anyway, right now we're still sponsoring many TV programs. Right now we have 37 TV programs every week and 2 radio programs. Those radio programs are both in the Philippines, and that is something that we also added in the last year. One of them is Larry Murdoch that you see there. He speaks on several shortwave radio programs throughout the world. And so he does the speaking on that program. We at World Evangelism financially support it. And then there's a Christian university in the north part of the Philippines that's actually going to do the follow-up work. So it's kind of a cooperative deal. So it's good when we can cooperate with other works and you get more done, obviously, that way. We're not getting a lot of responses from that program yet, but Larry said it takes probably a year, maybe more sometimes, to start getting some listeners on that program. So it hadn't been hardly but 6 months yet, so we'll still give it a little time. But we also began a new TV program about a year ago there in India, in the state where Bombay is located. Like I said, it began in September of last year, and has had phenomenal results. Even the very first month, it had 987 requests and 23 baptisms. Every month since then, it's pretty much been the same. We just got a report from him just a few days ago. The last month, he went down a little bit, only sent out 800 and something correspondence courses. But even then, he said he sent those out to the interested people. So I don't know how many requests he's getting or how many responses he's getting for it. I don't know how he makes a decision about which one to send it out to. But obviously, he's getting a lot of responses. But he's not doing it all by himself. There are several other preachers that help him. That is one preacher there you see giving a piece of literature out to one of the contacts there in India. And you've got to remember that as we have these TV programs and all these contacts, then of course that requires literature, which we also pay for the literature too. And so it's good to have these programs, good to have the contacts, but of course it also requires additional funds in addition to the TV programs. And so this has really turned out into a lot more money than maybe what we figured on, but we're able to handle it so far anyway. But that's kind of where he's located, right in the center of that state. And even then, his program does not cover the entire state. He calls his program a local program. But even though, and since India has so many people, even a local program still covers several million people. And so that's one reason kind of getting all the responses. Now, as far as we know, this is the first mass evangelism effort in the entire state. That may be one reason why he's getting so many responses, because nothing like that has ever been done before. But we're certainly glad to be able to start this program. The other radio program is in the Philippines, and this program began in November of last year. This is June. He's a Filipino brother that speaks on that program every Sunday at noon. It's kind of a dialogue that you see another man right behind him. They kind of dialogue together for about an hour there. And he said this program is quickly becoming one of the more popular programs in his area. And his area is located right there in that island there. Now, I'm not sure exactly how big an area it really covers. I know it doesn't cover nowhere near all the Philippine islands, but it does cover some area. But it's also in an area where the church is not well known. So there's a great need for a radio program. Hopefully that'll help establish the church much more greatly in that particular area. So we're certainly glad to be working with him. He's also loves the Voice of Truth. He loves what he calls Bible study centers. The little centers like you see here, people just come by, pick up the literature. He has the Voice of Truth and many of our other books there, and people just come by and pick the books up. But like I said, he loves the Voice of Truth. He said that little book has opened up a lot of doors. And so he does, at least before the COVID, he travels all over and talking to people and distributing literature. Of course, he's been very limited in the last year or so what he can do. Because Philippine Islands has pretty much, they're not completely locked down yet. I mean now, they're closed to foreign visitors, and they're very limited to what they can travel within the country even. But they are able to travel some. We've also in the last year or two started doing more video conferencing or video teaching. These are things that we normally would do, like if I went overseas. And so there in November and also in March, we had a preacher's seminar. Take the lessons here and, of course, send it to them in India, and then they broadcast it, as you can see on the screen there. And so that worked out pretty good, better than nothing at all, I guess you could say. So we'll maybe doing that. Shane, who works with us, Shane Fisher, he's probably going to do the next seminar, which will probably be in October or November. I'm not sure exactly when they got it scheduled there. We're still working with one of the schools of preaching there in India. This is over in the Vizag in the Andhra Pradesh region. And of course, last year it was closed for part of the year, but even then it still had 170 baptisms, several new congregations established. But they have suffered a great loss. Back in January of this year, I lost a picture. They lost one man died. That man right there, you see, he passed away back in January of this year. He's the director of that school. He passed away from COVID, but he had several other health problems as well. But the work would continue, I have no doubt about that. His son in the dark blue shirt there, of course, is continuing to work, and he has several other staff members you see there in the picture. So the work will continue, we have no doubt about that. But certainly I know they're going to miss him a great deal. But he was one of the old pioneer preachers. He'd been working in evangelism for many years, and he can remember, he told a lot of good stories back in the days when they had the big evangelistic meetings, and many people were baptized in them and that sort of thing. But this is also one of our co-workers as well, Philemon. This is in a picture when he was well. Well, in January 2020, he had a pretty severe stroke, and so that affected him greatly, but he made good recovery. He still, I think, has some limited movement, but it did not affect his brain or his speech any. For preachers, that's pretty important. And so he's able to continue his work. He's able to back traveling again now and everything like that. So, and that's the good part. There's where he's teaching in regards to a eldership seminar at his home congregation. And we've seen this in several places, not only in India, but in Trinidad and Tanzania, as well as in Ghana. you have churches either appointing elders or interested in appointing elders, and they're having seminars about elders and leadership and that sort of thing. And so you see churches not only growing numerically, but also growing spiritually and strengthening to the point where they beginning to be organized like they know God wants them to be organized. And that's the good part there. But there's the crowd that was gathered there for that particular seminar. He also does a lot of work with the blind people. There's about 15 million blind people living there in India. And so the blind work consists of 1 or 2 blind camps or blind meetings every month. And especially in the last year or so, this work has really become important. As you might expect, blind people are generally very poor anyway. But in the COVID situation, some of them are been literally starving. And so the benevolent aspect of it has become very important to those people. And this is one of those things that even in the midst of lockdowns, he was still able to continue. For instance, there's one meeting that had during the very height of the pandemic. They got special permission from the government to travel this area, which was about 2 hours from their home. And they had the meetings there. And of course, you see the little bags of rice that they gave to the ones that assembled. They also then, of course, gives the literature. They have the Seeker's Bible course, as well as the Voice of Truth in Braille. And of course, that's become very important as well. The Voice of Truth, of course, continues to be one of our main works. Right now, it is translated in 4 different Indian languages, in addition to Braille. We also translate it in the Nepali language, the country of Nepal. I think last year we printed 3 of them. We sent money for 2 so far this year. And so they're doing pretty good there. We also printed in English in India, Nigeria, and in Ghana. And in all those countries, I mean, they really love the Voice of Truth. And it seems to be one of the things that's really growing is the need for literature. We print 6,000 copies in Nigeria, 5,000 copies in Ghana. There's the ones in Nigeria they're working on getting ready to be distributed there. We also ship literature, the Voice of Truth, and other things to other countries as we find opportunity. These are some boxes that we can ship to the Philippines. Each box costs about $120, but they'll hold over 300 pounds of literature. So that's quite a bit of literature for that small amount of money. So they'll come by and pick it up, and that's always good too. And so we've got, you see 5 packed there. We do this about every 6 months. We got actually 6 packed up there at the office. We packed them up last week, just waiting for somebody to come pick them up. Hopefully, maybe next week when they'll come by and pick them up and be on the way to the Philippines. We also ship literature to the Caribbean islands, primarily Guyana and also Trinidad. There's a company in Nashville, Tennessee that has really cheap shipping rates to those countries. And so in Guyana, they love the literature in barrels. I don't know why, but obviously it's a lot. You're putting a square peg in round holes. It don't work too well. But you put as many boxes in you can, then you open the boxes up and you put individual books in there. But as you see, you got to stand on your head in order to start because the barrels is too tall. You can't reach over, so you got to, like I said, lean the barrel over, stand on your head, and get the first layer, So it's a kind of hard work until you get about half full. Then you kind of got it easier after that. We'll be doing that probably sometime in October. We normally would already have it done, but we were not able to get that done yet, so we still got to do that. What country we're going to go to in the future, and we don't know, of course. These are countries that we've either been to in the past or would like to go to. Obviously, we're not going to go to all of them this year. Let's just mention a few of them. We had planned to go to Nepal in September, but that's been canceled. They are under lockdown right now. Doesn't look like they're going to be able to open anything up that quick. And so maybe next year we'll be able to go. You might remember Myanmar had a military coup back in February. For a good while, I think it's kind of calmed down now. For a good while, it was a very dangerous place to be. One of our co-workers over there actually calls the cities war zones. And so it's a very dangerous place. But they've also had a lot of pandemic over there. I know we've lost at least two. One of our church leaders there, primarily they died from the COVID, but not necessarily from the disease being so bad. It's just they were not able to get any medical treatment or medicine because of the coup. I understand the doctors kind of sided with the rebels, and so the military is not working with them. So the military really don't care too much. And so that's kind of sad, but that's kind of the situation there. So they've suffered a great deal from medical problems related to the coup there. Vietnam and the Philippines, we normally would go there every year, but of course they've been closed to foreign visitors and still are. We've had one of our workers there from Vietnam. He'd been enrolled at Heritage Christian University in Florence, Alabama for the last 3 years, working on his master's degree. He's got that done now. He's ready to go back home, but he cannot even go back home, and he don't know when he's going to be able to make it. So that kind of describes the situation. But he's going to start a school of preaching there whenever he's able to get back and get it going there. We have been to Ukraine, but it's going to be a while before we go there. I went to Ghana back in March of this year. We have been to Trinidad, but of course not in the last couple of years. I'll be going to Tanzania. That was, like I said, the tickets I booked today. I'll be going there in September. We went to Zimbabwe back in May, wasn't it? We also went to Uganda. That's not even on the slide. I'll mention more about those in just a few moments there. Oops. In many of the countries we work with, of course, we're working with Bear Valley Extension Schools. As the beginning of this year, they had 44 schools in 28 different countries. Many of those schools, maybe most of them, were closed for at least part of the year last year. But even then, they still baptized 2,400 people. And that's probably about half of what they would have under a normal year. But most all of them are opening back up now, of course. But in all these countries, they're doing well, and it works well to work with them along with our literature. And we'll mention that here in just a moment. I did go to Tanzania, like I said, last year. That was the only trip I made last year. So I went there last year and got planned to go there again this year. In the Africa country, of course, they carry a lot of things on motorcycles. You see, they carry a lot of people on motorcycles, as you can see. Sometimes there's a lot of things there, like all those banana stalks. You see, that's actually in Uganda. One time in India, we saw 2 men and a live goat on a motorcycle. We've actually seen long ladders being carried on motorcycles. They'd put the ladders on top of their shoulder. Be 2 men on a motorcycle. They have the ladder on top of their shoulder, so their head be sticking up above the ladder. It looks kind of funny to see a head sticking above the ladder there. But you always think about what would happen if they happen to have a wreck. And I don't want to think about that. The good part is, in Tanzania, and we're proud to announce this, that we've started translating the literature into Swahili language now. Those 2 individuals there, Peter Kamatuli and Shadrach, I can't pronounce the last name. Y'all may have heard the name, I don't know, since y'all been associated with that work for so long. But they are working with us now. We've had 1 issue of the Voice of Truth printed and 3 little Bible correspondence courses that I've written. They've been printed and distributed. We've just sent money over there a couple of weeks ago to print the 2nd issue of the Voice of Truth, and so we're very excited to have that going. And this worked out again because of the association with schools. As I went over there to teach, of course, you're with our association with literature, then there's always some good we can do, because virtually every country in the world needs literature. And so we're able to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. If you're going to be working with someone, you really need to know them. So know who they are and kind of trust them and that sort of thing. But of course, it's hard to justify traveling halfway around the world to go there for a day or 2 just to meet them and come back home. But when you're working with a school and you stay there for a couple of weeks teaching, then it's easy to justify meeting and talking to them. And so that's one of the main reasons I wanted to go back to Tanzania this time, is to meet with them again personally and see how things are going and that sort of thing. Although I have a pretty good idea, but it's always nice to talk to them in person there. But that little red circle gives you a rough idea of where literature will be going. not only cover all of Tanzania, but they're going to send literature into most of the countries around there, because some of them, even though the whole country will not speak that language, there'll be pockets of people that will. And so that's going to go in several different countries. Well, we're very excited to have that literature going in that country. This slide here just really shows how blessed we are. This is the kitchen of one of the teachers at the Andrew Connolly School. When I was there last year, he invited me to his home for supper one night, and this is his kitchen, and you'll see what's really not in there. There's no tables, there's no chairs, there's no cabinets, no countertops, basically nothing at all. You have one little sink over on the wall, and that's it. You have a charcoal bucket there where they do the cooking. There's also propane burners standing behind her, and that's how they do the cooking. There's one woman right there, you sit and you see she's just sitting on a little plastic bucket. And you know, even the very smallest homes here have so much more than that. And so it really shows how blessed we are. We'll see this again in Zimbabwe here in just a moment. But I went back to Ghana, like I said, in March of this year. Been going there about every year. I didn't go last year, but other than that, about every year, been going there. And when I first got there this time, I met Seth Larby, which is the one there. He runs the Guide-like Literature Center, where he distributes the Voice of Truth, World Bible School literature, as well as literature from Mission Printing out of Dallas, Texas. And we sent money back at the first of this year to help buy that van to be used for his campaign work. And he's really putting it to good use. Just about every week or two, he's gone somewhere on a campaign. When I got there, we climbed in it, and the next day traveled basically all across the country, nearly to the Ivory Coast border. And there on Saturday, then, we had a leadership seminar, but we also carried a lot of literature with us as well. The whole back seat was filled up with literature. And when we got to where we were going, it was the women who unloaded the boxes of books. And you see the women carried them on top of their heads. Women do most all the hard work there in Africa. They seem to work harder than anybody else. And they carry everything on top of their heads and make it look so easy. I've never seen them drop anything. I've heard they did occasionally, but I've never seen it. But you don't see the men doing it. It's only the women. I guess men not coordinated enough to do it. But anyway, the women unloaded the boxes of books, and it felt kind of weird to me to be standing by and watching the women do the work that I thought, we should be doing. But that's the way they did it over there. Oh, I went too far. There's the good crowd that we had there. This was a leadership seminar, and I talked about elders, how to appoint elders and duties of elders and qualifications and that sort of thing. This is the second time we've been to this particular area, but I think about 17 congregations were represented out of this crowd. The very next day, on Sunday then, I preached at this congregation, and then soon after I got through preaching, we left, traveled about 45 minutes to this congregation. And so to have a worship service there. This is a newer building. That's kind of hard to see. That slide right in front of you is the old building. Normally it's supposed to come in later, but you're using a Mac, and I've been using a Windows and so computers, and so sometimes the slides gets all messed up here. But that's supposed to cover it up. That's covering up the main point. But the important thing is that this congregation had just recently built a new building, a much bigger building than this one. Not completely finished yet, but they're using it, and we're able to meet there. And it's quite a bit bigger than, of course, than this one, as you see. This is back in Accra, the capital city, very close to where the school is. And on Saturday, the next Saturday, we had the same seminar, of course, with different people. But you see the socially distancing, and at least some of the people wearing the mask. So in the African country, they do have some COVID, but not nearly as much as in the rest of the world. And so, like I said, the African countries, for most of the time, have been open, and most of them still are open. Although when I went to Tanzania Zimbabwe and Uganda, both of them, we went there, and immediately, almost within 2 or 3 days after we left, they locked down. So we're just very fortunate, I guess, we were able to leave before they locked down. But even then, According to what information we could find, they really did not have that many cases. I really don't know why they locked down. Probably more political more than anything else, I suppose. But anyway, there in Ghana, that's a very poor country, like most of the African countries are. You get off the main road, and the main road is fairly decent, not great, but fairly decent. You get off the main road and you get nothing but dirt. This is the road that I walked on from my hotel to where the classes were held, which is probably about a half a mile or so. And it rained 3 or 4 times while I was there. Of course, you know what happens in rain. When it rains, it collects in mud holes. And so on dirt roads, you got a big mud hole there. You walked around on the side here. You go a little bit further, and the mud hole gets bigger. And then you have to go around this side, across the road, and up that little bank. Go a little further, and then you wind up crossing on those rocks that you see somebody put there. So sometimes it's an adventure trying to get to class without getting your shoes all wet and muddy. But fortunately, I did not get too bad muddy anyway. But it worked out very well. Out of this, like I said, we had a leadership seminar here as well. About the same number of people we had at the other place, but about 50 congregations represented there. So we had only 1 or 2 people from every congregation, but you did have a lot of congregations represented. Like I said, in May of this year, my wife and I both went to Uganda and Zimbabwe. We've never been to either one of those countries before. The reason why we went to Uganda is because the preacher for our sponsoring church, the Strickland Church, had been going to Uganda every year for several years, and he'd been wanting us to go, but with our travel schedule, it just seemed like we never did really have time to go there. Well, of course, with our limited schedule now, we've had a little more extra time, and so we've had to work it out that we went there in May, and it turned out to be a very good trip. We traveled all across the country to the extreme western side of Uganda. This was up in the mountains area. Very beautiful scenery as far as that's concerned. You know how mountains are. You have some very beautiful vistas sometimes. But it's also a very poor part. These mountains were actually some of the highest mountains in the world. But very poor people living there. Most of them living just from day to day almost. Most of them are farming. They have no cars, no motorcycles, basically nothing up in the mountains, and they walk everywhere they go. But when we were going up in the mountains, we thought to ourselves, why are we coming way up here? Surely there's not that many people live up here. Well, we were mistaken on that. There was a whole lot of folks living up there. Children and, everybody walking here and there, but we were a lot of folks missing there. There. There's also a lot of churches in that area. Many of the churches do not have preachers. Even some of the preachers have not had any kind of specialized training or anything like that. And so I went there to teach in a school of preaching, and we're going to start supporting that particular school. Now, this is not a full-time school. It's more like a part-time school. The plans is to have 3 3-week sessions every year. Included with that is almost half the money going for evangelism. That's to help pay for the preachers that's there to go to these churches occasionally that don't have preachers to strengthen them, and of course other evangelism work as well. So it's kind of got a double-pronged approach to that. When we were going up there on Sunday, the first Sunday, we were told to go out and take a detour. The bridge you normally cross the river on collapsed the day before, and so we had to cross the river, literally crossed the river. Now, this car was not a high-clearance car, 4-wheel drive, or anything like that. It's just a regular old car. And we were wondering how we were going to cross the river in a little regular car like this. But we had crossed it with no problems, so we were glad to do that. Fortunately, a couple of days later, the bridge was fixed, and we was able to use the bridge the rest of the time that we were there. But we got to where we were going, and a very nice church building there, nice size church building too. This was about 80 probably people gathered there on Sunday morning. This was after church there. You see all the people, children wandering around, but notice there's nothing there. No cars, no motorcycles, nothing. I think there was one car, and that was the car we come up here in. We stayed at a hotel at the base of the mountains and drove up into the mountains every day. They did have new facilities there, if you understand what I mean there. Again, that kind of shows, I guess, how blessed we really are here. But this is the class that I taught. I thought I was going to have about 14 or 15 students. I wound up close to 25. That woman you see there, she's actually the preacher's wife. And to give you an idea, again, how blessed we are, she teaches school, but where she teaches is an hour and a half from a house, but she walks. You know, we think a commute for an hour a day is a long way to commute, and it is, but it's not too bad if you're driving in an air-conditioned car. How would you like to walk for an hour and a half, and then teach school all day, then walk an hour and a half back, and she got 5 kids at home? So obviously she's a very busy individual. So again, that just shows the difference in countries here. But my class was literally met in what we would call a cow shed with dirt floors and everything. But like I said, this was one of the things that we're going to be start supporting because we did notice a lack of biblical knowledge, even among the preachers. Generally, they did not have enough knowledge of the Bible like they should, especially of the Old Testament. And so hopefully this will help strengthen the church there and strengthen the preachers from a knowledgeable standpoint. Paula taught a ladies' class every day for the first week. They did the cooking they did. They cooked over an open fire with wood and everything. This is Paula's class. Like I said, she had about 40 or 50 students there every day. Some of them, at least one of them we know, walked an hour and a half to get there for class every day. And she was there by 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, she only had classes the first day, the first week, because the preacher said the women just could not take off 2 weeks. And I suppose that's true, because remember, as I said, women do all the hard work anyway, so keeping the household going for, 2 weeks when you don't do anything would be hard to do it there. There's also, to give you an idea of the number of kids there, there's a secular school just up the road about a quarter of a mile or so, which is operated by the church. Of course, American money there actually built the building and everything, but it's operated by the church. But they have about 400 students there. So, like I said, there's a lot of kids and a lot of family live up in that area. You know, women many times are the backbone of the church. We probably know of several congregations here in the U.S. even that are in existence today primarily because of women back many, many years ago. Well, this is one I'm here. This was at the base where we were staying at. The church there has a pretty nice building there now, but this was the preacher and where the church met. The church actually met in the home of this older lady here many years ago. Of course, she's had a lot of problems since then. Since then, her husband actually left her. Her husband actually started a denominational church, but she's continued faithful, and so without her help and assistance, that church would have certainly had a hard time over the years. Well, from Uganda then, we went to Zimbabwe. And again, we went there this time primarily, at least we thought we were going to meet Philemon from back in India, to teach in the School of Evangelism, which is not a preacher school as such. Is that the first bell or something? So I got about 5 minutes? Okay. So this was not a preacher school. It's a School of Evangelism trained, for the purpose of encouraging individual Christians to be better evangelists, pass out tracts, whatever can be done to acquaint other people with the gospel of Christ. It came about as a result of a recommendation from a preacher in India that went through the program 3 or 4 years ago. He was so excited about it, he got this man in Zimbabwe to invite him over. So Philemon went there in December 19. You remember he had a stroke in January 2020. About the time he'd gotten over the stroke enough that he might think about traveling again, that's when the COVID hit, and of course everything changed, and so he had not been able to go back. We were going to meet him there this time, but shortly before his flights left, of course, you remember the pandemic in India surged again, so they canceled his flights. And so he got plans to go there in March. Not March, August, then about 3 or 4 weeks. He's going to be there, and hopefully he'll be able to go this time. But this is the preacher and his family, great evangelists, great soul winners. We're very excited about the future of the work there. Of course, the church is doing very well in Zimbabwe. We noticed a much greater knowledge of the Bible among the people there, but they're also, the church is doing very well. This is his congregation. They're just in the outskirts of the capital city, but of course the people here are still very poor. You notice the church building does not have two walls. They got the blocks for the other two walls, but just they haven't put them up yet. But remember, this is in what we might call a subdivision of the capital city. So this is a very urban area, and yet it's still very poor. You see dirt roads. The houses there from the outside at least look to be fairly nice homes, but I guess none of them have running water. Healing Hands had dug a well there at the church property, equipped with filtration system and everything. And so all those women you see there with the buckets, they're coming there to get the clean, fresh water to drink in their homes. And I have no idea how far they would carry them, but you know how heavy 5 gallons of water is when you start carrying it very far. And again, mostly it's the women who come and get the water. But that water has resulted in, he said, thousands of baptisms over the years probably. And it's really been a great help to the church there in Zimbabwe. But we had a seminar there every week. I taught the book of Acts, concentrating especially on the conversion stories. There's the women that did the cooking. You see the white stuff on that plate there might look like mashed potatoes. Well, it's not mashed potatoes. It's what they call sadza, but it's something like our grits with absolutely no taste to it. They loved it, but we did not care much for it. But there's the women's class. Paula had a women's class every day. Now you notice that it's cool there. This is getting to be their winter. And so for them it's especially cold. Though they had to wrap some sweaters and coats and everything there. They moved the benches out in the sun because a little bit warmer out in the sun there. But we did have 6 people baptized at the end of the week. We had one baptized in Uganda. I forgot to mention that. But they had 6 baptized here. Paul on Sunday had a children's class, about 40 or 50 children, just outside, no classrooms or anything like that. This is Sunday morning, had a nice-sized congregation, about 200 people there probably. But this congregation has 3 preachers in it, besides the one that normally preaches there, but those are going to establish 3 congregations in 3 different areas. And so we've committed to sending $150 a month to help pay for transportation for those 3 preachers to go to these areas where they're going to start the brand new congregations. This is one of them here, outside again the capital city, in a new subdivision where many houses are being built. Right now they don't have anything. They're just literally meeting under a tree there. He did ask for $6,000 to build a little shed there. So maybe if you have any extra money, y'all might give a little bit to help build that little shed there for them. We're also going to do a lot of literature. We're very excited about this as well. They're very excited to see literature all around the country. And he thinks that's going to really help the church grow because apparently they hadn't had much literature to be used there. And so we print money to print 20,000 tracts, 3 books already. We'll be doing some more. But this is a secular school, a private school, not a Christian school, but a private school very close to the church building. And every child in this school is required to take the World Bible School lessons. And that's about 1,100 students. So that's a great open door there. The preacher at the church, they call him their pastor. And so he's, of course, running the program there. So that's a great open door and hopefully a great lot of fruit. This slide just really shows how the different aspects of our work. We have obviously books in both foreign language as well as English. We do a lot of TV and radio programs. We also do a lot of teaching by internet. We also started an English TV program in India last year. And so it's one program every week. And I tape the lesson here, send it to India. They put the introduction and conclusion on it, make it suitable for broadcast in India. And so I'm preaching pretty much every week in India, even though I can't go there. So we're doing a lot more of that sort of thing as well. So I guess it just shows the many different aspects of our work, and that's one reason why our work was able to expand even in the midst of the pandemic there. And so I end up my presentation. Again, I appreciate so much your help and support of our work over the years. And does anyone have any questions for just a moment? If not, then